When I was younger, my family and I went on a road trip to Wyoming to see Yellowstone National Park. It's a beautiful place, and if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend it. Anyways, so from our home in California, it was about a 17-hour drive in our Yukon XL. It took us several days worth of on and off driving to get there, and during the nights, we would try to find a little motel to rest at. One of the nights, due to us being behind schedule, my dad attempted to drive through the night to get us there sooner. He made it probably into the wee hours of the night before he deemed it unsafe and parked us in this little unlit rest stop in the middle of the woods in some flyover state. My brothers and I had fallen asleep in the car several hours before he'd stopped, so for at least a couple hours, we were all sleeping in the car in this dark, little parking lot surrounded by forest. Having got a couple hours of sleep and being in a pretty uncomfortable position, I woke up in the middle of the night, pretty disoriented but not really scared. I looked around and saw everyone fast asleep in this pitch-black car, and naturally I felt pretty alone. I tried to fall back asleep, but it just wasn't working out, so I just sat there for a while, boredom setting in. Looking out the window to see where we were, it was pitch black, so I couldn't see Jack *T. Luckily, I wasn't the type to pack light and had brought a couple flashlights in my bag. Being careful not to disturb my sleeping family, I reached into the back seat, unzipped my bag, and pulled out a little plastic, yellow flashlight. It wasn't the brightest, but it was enough to see the foreground of the general surroundings. I put it up to the glass, making sure not to make any noise, and pushed the little switch into the on position. I pressed my face against the glass and looked out. At first, it looked like a normal tree line with some bushes, trees, whatever. But as I scanned the darkness, looking for animals, buildings, etc., I noticed this dark shape standing between these two trees in the distance. It looked like the shape of a man, but it wasn't moving. Just sitting there. After watching it for a good while and seeing no real signs of movement, I just assumed it was a bush or some kind of natural occurrence. Just as I was about to turn the light off and reattempt sleep, I saw this shadow shape turn 90 degrees and move behind a tree, disappearing from sight. This scared the shit out of me, and I immediately turned off the flashlight and threw my sweater-turned blanket over my head, shut my eyes tightly, and covered my ears. I was paralyzed with fear and, too full of adrenaline to get any sleep, sat in this semi-fetal position, clutching my flashlight, for the rest of the night. I waited until the sun came up and we were back on the road before I got any sleep. I didn't tell anybody about the man I saw in the woods. We were leaving a wedding we had attended that was held about 3 hours from home. My boyfriend had stayed sober in order to drive us home. I was pretty drunk. As we were driving the dark country backroads to get back to the city, I was half dozing. I remember squinting because there seemed to be bright headlights washing over us, and then my boyfriend who was driving started screaming, like full-on screaming like I've never heard him do before or since. It wasn't a loud, high-pitched screaming, but a deep-in-the-throat screaming that broke in and out and that left him hoarse. He swerved our car sharply to the side of the road nearly into a ditch. I was now fully awake, and said, "What? Are you okay?" He said that he saw a truck coming full bore towards us in the dark, and honestly thought we were going to die. I looked behind us. A long, straight road with no houses or streetlights. There was no sign of a truck or any kind of vehicle, no rear headlights on the road or any light from a truck's headlights, which we would have seen, and no sound of truck or car, or anything. But he was shaking, and I initially brushed it off as him maybe falling asleep at the wheel, which is already scary in and of itself. We were on a narrow country road. There was no way a massive truck could have gone by us without hitting our car, and I don't remember feeling the rumble and vibrating of our car, which was an old POS, that would have happened if a truck had narrowly missed us. So I dismissed it. He still swears that he saw a massive truck coming towards us. However, I do remember a flood of headlights hurting my half-closed eyes just before my boyfriend freaked out. This story is from my grandpa. He's a retired long-distance truck driver, and he often drove throughout the night and early hours of the morning over unfamiliar roads. This one particular day, when my grandpa was in his 30s, it was between 2 and 3 o'clock in the night, and he was driving down a twisting country road that was so narrow only one vehicle could fit at a time. If two vehicles met from different directions, one would have to pull off the road to let the other pass. The road was empty save for my grandpa. On the right side of the road, there was thick woodland, and on the left, open fields and a lake. There were no street lights. The only light came from my grandpa's truck and the moon. It was pretty lonely. My granddad was going steadily down the road, and going a bit faster than he should have. When my grandpa said this, I always took it to mean he was blazing down the road as fast as the truck could go. He was listening to the radio and probably not paying much attention when he suddenly felt hands on his shoulders and a voice whisper his name in his ear, so close that he felt the breath on his skin. He recognized the voice. It belonged to his mother, who had passed away a few years previously. Naturally, this spooked my grandpa, and he instinctively hit the brakes. Seconds later, his headlights lit up a pile of 3 crashed cars that took up the entire road. My grandpa stopped just short of the wreckage. If he hadn't braked when he did, he would have plowed straight into the cars. The occupants in the crashed cars were all severely injured, and my grandpa was able to get emergency help. Had he joined the pileup, it probably would have meant a more dire outcome for all of them. There's a number of explanations for what my grandpa heard and felt, but my grandpa truly believes it was his mother giving him a warning. Pulling into the Bakken oil field in North Dakota. I was in a large RV pulling a truck. I just turned off a road that didn't seem to exist, dirt, huge holes, and small boulders in the road construction, GPS said. Happily, I pulled onto this 2-lane highway at 1 a.m. No one was on the road but huge Mad Max-looking tractor trailers passing me at 80 miles per hour. The wind was whipping my tin can around like it had a grudge. I crested a large hill, and all I saw were low-lying clouds glowing orangish red. The hills all had huge flames coming out of them, flares for natural gas burn-off. The scene was like hell. Driving for hours through a valley populated only by fire and demonic trucks with an orange sky in a land 2,000 miles from my own.